I am François Charette.
My name is Alik Movundika.
My name is Pavitri Palais.
Anastasia.
Kassimova. Bonjour, je m'appelle Nadine Gaufron.
I'm Cheryl Voss.
Moin, es sind der Paul von Lützeburg.
It's Kristen Van Vliet.
I'm Dominic Beirut.
I'm from Canada.
I'm from Zambia.
I'm from South Africa.
I'm from Russia, from Russian Academy of Sciences.
I am from Azerbaijan National Academy of Science.
J'habite en Italie, je suis française.
Ethiopia.
I'm here from Canada.
Und es freut mich, heute zu Lindau zu sein.
I'm from Boston.
From Bochum.
Et je souhaite une très bonne conférence à tout le monde.
Saubona Иксу.
Я очень довольна, что приехала в Линдау. Это очень красивый город.
Bienvenue à tout le monde et à tous les jeunes du monde entier.
Salam. I'm very happy to be a part of this conference.
Ich freue mich sehr auf die Konferenz. Ich bin sehr gespannt, wie es wirklich mit so vielen internationalen Leuten. Es wird sicher lustig.
The collaboration is not only getting money, transfer information, and getting scientific and technology from developed countries to the developing countries. That is one part of collaboration.
Okay, I'm telling you straight what's happening now. We are a fairly young organization. We have no money. We managed to secure a bit of money recently. It looks like a dynamic organization and it looks successful. That's why I get a lot of actually requests from people from Zimbabwe, from Uganda, etc., which are accepted in my organization. They get information, etc. But I got statements from them which I can legitimately understand. I want to go to your workshops. I think that's the same. And it's difficult for me. It's very difficult to answer this question. Where do I stand? I will have about 6-7 funding slots. How do I react as a Western scientist? I want my organization to go forward. My first reaction is not to trust people that don't have experience in permafrost. I think that's my first reaction. And I have a hard time actually going to these people, and I think it will take a lot of effort to actually get there and get those people. And I think it's not the right way to go.
Some of the ways we are now, for instance, in the University of Pretoria, bringing in new students is from global areas. For instance, in the mining industry, we've got our leaders in, say, platinum, mining of platinum, the resources you do not find anywhere else in the world. So if you are, it's another way of attracting global cooperation and saying, we've got the platinum, share your technology and your knowledge with us, and vice versa. Just another way.
The developing country is looking towards meeting international mandates, and the developed country is looking towards new innovative ways and scientific methods addressing these issues. So you can meet both parties' interests, the science component and the society component for the progress for the developing countries.
Both developing countries and, for example, European countries can solve the problem together. The countries like Peru inviting scientists, showing, okay, that are our problems or scientific ideas we want to solve, that are our facilities, what we can do, just come and help us or give us the possibilities, but we from the European countries should not come as scientific invaders or scientific colonizationists, but more kind of giving advice and then leaving our knowledge also there and inviting back people from Peru, for example, to participate in our conferences, in our facilities to make research here. So really both sides and a giving and taking, and there are nice possibilities, I guess.
Working with the developed countries, you've got that benefit of experience. Okay, at the same time, you've got the expertise in the developed countries. Don't ever doubt that. The developing countries have lots of expertise. They just need to be harnessed properly. So I think as far as what role we can play in the scientific arena, it's quite a big one. We also have different experiences in terms of where we're coming from, more recent history, so to speak. And we can bring that in as well. Societal issues are very major in developing countries with long histories. So bringing in that society and science works easier in developing countries because we have nothing. We're starting from scratch. You know, so you can use these tools to get in society buying into what you are doing.
It's a lot of people from different countries interacting with each other, and I think it leads somewhere. That the things that this organization, for instance, and others, like bring people together and do stuff, and those people that are there, like, they're gonna have the contacts because it's all about contacts. What's happening here? You're making contacts at coffee breaks. That's where things happen. So that's precisely what happened there.
One key word that comes up is networking. And you don't have to come to a meeting to network. Because now with internet access and with email access, and most developing countries have access to ICT equipment, that is your function. Participate beyond your science. Don't get stuck in your lab doing that. You have to go beyond that, and you can do those searches, you can find networks, you can join people, you can talk to people, you can find out what commonalities you have in terms of your research.
As for international collaboration, I think it's not a problem of contacts or of establishing contacts because it's always possible to do it. I think a problem, at least what I'm facing, is that there is no really organizations that can fund such research. How it was working for me, that actually I was having projects from national government and trying to establish contacts with people that work in the same area abroad and just hosting students or something like that. But it's always a problem about funds, about traveling, and ICSU president and vice president was saying that they would like to have a feedback, and at least my opinion is that something needed in the future to be changed about that, like that governmental agency would consider to fund international research that would include different groups of different countries.
I'm part of the IPY, so the International Polar Union. This is an incredible effort where all projects are international and where there is no international funding. A lot of projects had a lot of difficulties because the US component was funded but not the Norwegian, or the Russian was funded but not the Danish part of the project. They were like circumarctic in scope, and that created a lot of issues in that set, although it's a huge success. But that was a huge highlight for what you were saying. I think that there is a need now to address this issue, and I think that's not, it's like at a very high level that you need to bring these issues on the table. I think that like the way we define the paradigm, or from what I gathered this morning of science, we're not going to avoid having like, or at least talking about international funding instruments.
What has been brought up here is a very clear mandate from young scientists of some developing countries that foundations in developed nations that fund scholarships for underdeveloped scientists or nations to go and train in the developed world should have a re-entry grant. It's very simple. And this mandate gives substance to part of WAYS, because WAYS is worried about young scientists all over the place. So my short recommendation, wish, is that somebody writes this down as a mandate not for ICSU, because ICSU is not a funding agency, as has been said, but as a general mandate for appeal with legitimacy of an international organization of young scientists.
Don't forget the old guys. Yes, they might want to stay in their labs and work in their labs and not really function, but they have a wealth of information with them. They also lots of them have grants and money, and they know how, and they've accessed ways to get that money. Don't forget them. Use them, establish your own mentorship programs, involve them in the program. Say to a professor, say, would you be willing to, just attend one of our meetings and give us some advice on how you wrote your proposal, your grant, how you got so much millions worth of research funding. Access them. They're wonderful in terms of information and value. I mean, they've got fantastic scientific agendas. It's one that's made them such fantastic professors. But let's teach them something about networking and participation. So work beyond your science. And only you can do that.
It's not the space for us to be talking, it's the space for us to be listening for a change.
We can agree that transdisciplinary research is important, but we have to have an opportunity to do it. And we have to convince, I think, the ones who have the power, let's say, to give grants, etc., that it is important to fund transdisciplinary research.
For me, this is my publication, and I do transdisciplinary work.
But as a young scientist, we need to publish, to publish, to publish. And as the first speaker talked, we need to publish. And when we have big teams, it's difficult to publish your paper. So how can we fight against this?
In some countries, like in my country, it's not easy at all. And if I see what they evaluated from my postdoctoral fellowship, they only had a look to my publication. And I'm sure I did a lot of other things, because we are trying to work with the schools, with this climate change and polar research, and we are giving a lot of talks for the society, but this is not considered at all in general. And I think this is not fair.
We are somehow obliged to publish as much as possible. It is also important to consider that publications are mostly valuable when they belong to the citation index. And on top of that, that is a very big obstacle for the transdisciplinarity work among physical or natural scientists and the social scientists.
Society is going to make demands on the scientists in the future that are different from the demands that societies made in the scientists of the past. And societies are developing mechanisms of making these demands on scientists.
There is some place in science, psychological barrier to this, which is scientists are usually very proud of their science and they want to, I was looking for my word, and they are thrived by credit and publication and recognition. And the problem is whenever we go towards teamwork, it's often masked the contribution of the person.
We have to break some barriers. So the question of the publications is probably one of the barriers that young scientists are facing today, because they say we cannot publish our transdisciplinary research.
So we have to add all the contributors to the authors list. And so such kind of structure and so human systems is also really important. And so it's desirable in the beginning that someone writes the rules for the collaboration. That so if we make it, and then so we can publish all together. And so such kind of rules is very important, and some kind of skill is required. But so if we can make it, and so such kind of collaboration is very effective to write the papers. And so as first author in one publication, and as a co-author for several publications.
Society has problems and universities have departments. And it's getting to the point where society is going to be saying to scientists in the future, that when we come to you with a problem, you restate the problem to suit your solution.
This is a publication which has brought together practitioners and scientists and policymakers and to discuss how do you manage climate risk in Africa. The problem is, I mean, that I've been working at Lindau for a year and a half. I haven't done any research. And so what they're doing is they're trying to devise a new system for evaluating me, whether or not I'm going to get tenure.
She produced a booklet. It may have even more impact than the publication in Science and Nature and Lancet. But as society, we say, too bad. Try to find a way of taking your work and putting it in Science and Nature. Only when you've done that will you be able to say whether you're good or not. Are there other ways of doing it in such a way? And I honestly ask it as a genuine question because I don't have the answer to the question. And I was responsible for disbursing funds in South Africa.
When a graduate student becomes trained in a transdisciplinary area, they no longer have as much of a focus in one of those areas. Yet the job market is still, in Canada at least, quite traditional. You get hired as a molecular biologist or as a medical physicist.
Of course, and the transdisciplinary will be always a plus for him. It's something which will open his mind on something else. And of course, these grad students could continue his studies.
But is it an added value on the job market, for example?
Of course, it's always an added value for him.
It's the problem of appreciation, maybe more. And if one thinks of searching for grants for some very transdisciplinary field, I think you face first a problem in your own research group that maybe these guys from the field don't appreciate.
Do you think that the young scientists have a role to play to, let's say, re-educate?
When we come inside university, when we are hired, you are given an empty lab and the key for your office, and they told you, okay, you have your things, you can do whatever you want.
All the scientists had the burdens of changing the views and changing the minds of the older ones. Galileo has also to struggle with everybody in that time, and it was more or less the same.
It's just a tool, and this tool is just having a hammer, and you don't have a hammer, you have a whole something to do out of it.
I strongly believe that the question we need to pose is why do we want to move into transdisciplinarity? And the answer, which is the negative one, I mean, it's not for publishing. Transdisciplinarity means that we will be able to solve problems of society.
I find it possibly a big risk to champion, to take the lead in forming a group or a research proposal in that direction, because in the transdisciplinary research, I think the skills required is beyond science.
Society itself is actually imposing its will on science. That being that in our Western democracies at least, science is more or less governed now by market forces. That is, we have to apply for grants, so it's very much competitive.
And the market force, society exerts itself as a force. And that says, if you want money from us as society, these are the expectations that we have of you.
So maybe we have to take a step back and reflect on the fact how science has actually been influenced by society and which pressures of society is given into. And maybe go back to sort of the humanist scientist of the day who could pursue, as well as writing literature, he could also pursue his interests in terms of being a naturalist. Maybe we have to reflect on that in that sense, maybe go back to the roots of science.
But a sociologist will say, aha, the chickens have come home to roost. Let's understand where it comes from. Let's understand why it evolved the way it evolved and how we can make it evolve differently going forward.
I think this is a lot of work is just
or a lot of energy is just wasted by rebuilding everything, and to think everything should be rebuilt new. And this is what I don't want to do too much, because I think this is not really what I wanted to have. I want to do science, I want to work, and want to get new results, and not to rebuild my university at home. This is not my field, I would say.
And of course, that will be then the task for the ICSU fellows. That if we want to move into that area, the assessment or evaluation of our output needs to be changed. It needs not to be depending on the number of papers, on the impact of the journals we publish in. It has to be according to the result we give to the societies to solve a specific problem, to solve disaster, to solve climatic change, to solve energy issues, food, and so on and so on. So it has to be really an important issue to change the view of the assessment of science that is done all over the world.